The Juvenile Justice Without Borders International Award has deep meaning for me. It was the plight of child offenders that brought me into the world of children's rights. In my first job, I was a prosecutor, and they put me in the juvenile court. I think the thinking at the time was that this was a good place to cut one's teeth. What actually happened was I was devastated by what was happening to children in South Africa at the time. It was 1986, so 8 years before the end of apartheid, and the system was pretty rough. Children as young as 7 could be prosecuted. Whipping as a sentence was a daily occurrence. I saw children who'd been bitten by police dogs. I saw children who had been sitting against a prison wall for so long doing nothing that the hair had rubbed off the back of their heads. I knew that something had to change, and it was that galvanized me into a career on human rights and children's rights in order to try and do something about this. The timing was good for me. I joined Lawyers for Human Rights in 1988, and 2 years later, Nelson Mandela was released, and suddenly the possibilities for reform seemed endless. Indeed, when Nelson Mandela made his first speech to Parliament, he said that he would empty the jails of children. And it was during Nelson Mandela's first term of office, or his only term of office, that I was appointed to lead the committee that would draft South Africa's new law on juvenile justice. That is called the Child Justice Act, and it came into operation in 2010. And that promise that Mandela made about releasing children from prison did in fact bear fruit. At the time that he was talking, there were about 4,000 children in prison in South Africa. Today, there are less than 200. Of course, that doesn't mean that we don't have any challenges in our system. Indeed, we do. And there are many challenges in the rest of the world as well. At an international level, one of my most abiding memories was etched on my brain in the year 2000. I was part of an international study group that visited an Eastern European country. We were looking at the situation of child offenders in that country. We found ourselves in a small town talking to the chief of police, and we asked if we could see a child who he told us was being held in the police cells there. He was taken off guard and agreed to allow us in. The cell door opened onto this tiny, dark, cigarette smoke-filled cell. There was only one tiny window above eye level, closed, and a 14-year-old boy was in there with 3 adult men. He'd been there for over a year, awaiting trial on a charge of murder. What was interesting, though, was that during the same visit, at the same time period in the same country, I also saw children who'd been sentenced to prison, and their conditions were a lot better, which reminds us how important it is to keep a focus on children in police cells and children awaiting trial, whose rights are so often overlooked. A few years ago, I had the privilege to work on a thematic report which considered all the many ways in which children may become victims of violence when they're in the criminal justice system. And it also came up with a lot of ideas about how one could prevent this in the future. Just generally in the world at the moment, this is an important time for juvenile justice. The SRSG on violence against children has recently announced that the global study on juveniles deprived of their liberty is about to begin. It's also been reported that distinguished Professor Manfred Novak has been appointed as the expert to lead that study, which is very good news. I'm looking forward to the study because with over 1 million children in detention through the criminal justice system, also in psychiatric institutions, and more in immigration detention centers, the need for the study is indeed great, and the time is ripe for it. I'm looking forward to it and all the possibilities for reform that it brings. So however much work we may all have done in the past, much more work lies ahead of us. The International Juvenile Justice Observancy plays a very important role, keeping its finger on the pulse of developments on juvenile justice all around the globe. The children that they worry about are amongst the world's least loved children, and that makes their work all the more important. I hope the IJJO goes from strength to strength and that they continue to keep candles burning for children all over the world. Once again, let me say thank you for this recognition on the international stage for the modest part that I've played, particularly in my own country, for children in the criminal justice system. I hope to join the ongoing efforts of IJJO and do more for children at an international level in the coming years. Thank you.